There's a moment no one warns you about on the healing journey, a moment not marked by tears or pain, but by quiet, grounded realization. After months, maybe years, of letting go, rebuilding, meditating, and becoming, he returns. He texts you out of nowhere, wants to talk, says he's been thinking about you, tells you you've been on his mind. The person who once left you in silence now speaks. But what stuns you isn't his message. It's your reaction to it. Because the woman who once waited for that message is no longer here. She evolved, she let go, she healed. She stopped chasing his love and started becoming her own. And this energetic shift is not coincidence. It is coherence. It is what happens when the energy you emit no longer speaks of need, scarcity, or abandonment, but radiates from worth, peace, and inner wholeness. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches us, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. When you begin to heal, you shift the electromagnetic field around you. Your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs change the signal your body sends out into the quantum field, and the field listens. That's why, so often, when you finally stop obsessing, when you stop trying to fix or chase or prove your worth, they return, not because you pulled them back, but because you released your attachment, and with it, the identity that kept you stuck. But here's the truth. When they return, something in you knows you've already moved on. Because you've arrived at a place far deeper than reconciliation. You've arrived at wholeness. You realize you never needed closure from them. You needed a deeper connection to yourself. You never needed them to choose you. You needed to stop abandoning your own heart. We've been conditioned to think someone out there completes us. That a person, a relationship, a text, an apology will finally make us feel enough. But that belief keeps us chasing what we already are. Healing is the sacred act of remembering you are not broken, you are not lacking, you are not a half waiting to be made whole. You are already whole. You always were. So when he returns, you don't feel victorious, you don't feel like you won. You feel clarity, you feel peace, you feel freedom. Because this time, you're not reacting from the old emotional patterns, the fear of rejection, the addiction to validation, the ache of the past. You're responding from a new energy, one grounded in presence, one rooted in truth, one that knows, I don't need someone to come back. I need to never leave myself again. That's the power of true healing. It doesn't guarantee someone returns. It guarantees that you do. And when you do, the world changes in response. So, if he returns, bless him. But don't lose yourself trying to replay an old story. The healed version of you is not interested in old wounds dressed in new words. She is focused on what aligns, what expands, what reflects her new vibration. Because she didn't just survive heartbreak. She used it as a portal. And now, she doesn't chase love. She radiates it. And the world feels it. Even he does. But what matters most, you feel it. And you finally know you were the love you were waiting for. In the voice and vision of Dr. Joe Dispenza, where healing is energetic, neurological, and deeply spiritual, we begin the healing journey thinking we are trying to get someone back. We replay conversations. We analyze their words, their silence, their actions, our mistakes. We rehearse the perfect apology, the perfect reunion, the moment they finally see our worth. But all of that effort, emotional, mental, spiritual, is being directed outward, toward someone else, toward their change, their realization, their return, and in doing so, we remain in separation, not just from them but from ourselves. Joe Dispenza teaches that true transformation does not begin with someone else's behavior. It begins the moment you decide, I no longer need the past to validate me. Because what you're really seeking isn't him. It's the version of you that felt alive, worthy, and safe when he was there. Healing isn't about getting someone back. It's about getting yourself back. Your presence, your power, your coherence. The self that wasn't trying to be chosen, but already was whole. When you remain emotionally attached to a person, your energy is fragmented. Your body is living in the past. Your brain is firing the same neural patterns of loss, longing, and unworthiness. You're not creating a new future. You're memorizing an old identity. Dr. Dispenza's neuroscience is clear. Every time you think about him with pain, with longing, with self-doubt, you reinforce a biochemical state in your body that keeps you tethered to the old self. And the longer you stay there, the more your body believes that your worth is still tied to his presence. But when you begin to heal, truly heal, you are not trying to get him back. You are reclaiming your energy, bringing it back to your own body, your own heart, your own field. You start waking up for you. You begin meditating not to manifest him, but to regulate you. You stop rehearsing conversations and start reconditioning your nervous system. You stop trying to fix a person and begin reprogramming a pattern. This shift is radical because it's not about making them remember you. It's about remembering yourself before you shaped yourself for them, before you betrayed your boundaries, before you silenced your intuition. As you do this, something profound happens. Your electromagnetic signature, the field you send out, begins to change. You're no longer signaling fear, lack, desperation. You're now vibrating with worth, clarity, presence. And here's the paradox that's often the moment he returns. But this time, you're not the same. You don't need validation. You don't need explanation. You're not hoping to be seen. Because you've finally seen yourself, you don't answer from your wound. You respond from your wholeness. And sometimes that response is silence. Sometimes it's grace. Sometimes it's a simple, no, thank you. I'm no longer her. Because the healed woman doesn't chase the person who broke her. She honors the fact that the breaking led to a breakthrough. She blesses the past but refuses to relive it. This is not bitterness. This is not revenge. This is sovereignty. So no, healing isn't about getting him back. It's about returning to the self who never needed fixing. The self you abandoned while trying to hold on to love. The self who now stands unshaken, unchained, and undeniably whole. And that self, she doesn't wait for someone to come home. She is the home, in the elevated, science-rooted, and heart-awakening voice of Dr. Joe Dispenza. The external world is not the starting point of change. It is the echo, the reflection, the after-effect. What really shifts first, long before the text message arrives or the relationship changes, is your energy, and most people never realize it. You may think nothing is happening while you're meditating, journaling, crying quietly in your room. You may think the universe isn't listening when you stop reaching out and start looking inward. But something is happening, something monumental. You're changing your frequency, and the quantum field is taking notice. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches that we are electromagnetic beings living in a field of infinite possibilities. Our thoughts send out an electrical signal. Our emotions broadcast a magnetic field, and when the two align consistently in coherence, they create a new energetic signature, a vibrational identity. When your thoughts shift from, "Why doesn't he want me?" to, "I choose myself," and your emotions evolve from fear to inner peace, you stop broadcasting the frequency of lack. You begin broadcasting the frequency of wholeness. And this is where real change begins, not in trying to fix or attract someone, but in becoming the energy of what you once believed could only come from others. This energetic shift is powerful, but it doesn't always create instant, visible change, because while your frequency may be rising, your external world still lags behind, not as punishment, but as a test of alignment. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They start healing but look around and see no evidence, no calls, no texts, no closure. So they revert back to the old identity, back to the old emotion, back to the old frequency. But healing is not about speed. It's about stability. The question is not, How fast will things change? The question is, can I hold my new energy long enough for reality to catch up? Because it will. The field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being, consistently, emotionally, energetically. When you sustain coherence, when you wake up daily and choose presence over panic, gratitude over grasping, stillness over seeking, you become magnetic, not in a mystical way, but in a physiological, energetic reality. And eventually, the external reflects it. People you haven't heard from in months reach out, doors open. The impossible becomes ordinary. Sometimes, yes, he returns. But here's the paradox again. By the time that happens, you've risen so far beyond needing it that the old dynamic no longer resonates. Because what was once your goal, his return, becomes irrelevant in the presence of your inner transformation. You're no longer looking for validation. You're emanating truth. You're no longer trying to attract love. You're embodying it. Dr. Dispenza reminds us, if you want a new outcome, you must become a new energy. And that energy is not just a mindset, it's a state of being. So when nothing seems to be changing, ask yourself, have I changed? Have I shifted the emotion? Have I realigned the thought? Have I elevated the signal I'm sending? Because reality responds to the field, and the field responds to you. So don't chase the outer world to prove your healing. Commit to becoming the version of you who no longer needs proof. Because in that still, powerful place, you've already changed your world, even if it hasn't shown up yet. And when it finally does, you'll realize the most important thing. It wasn't about him returning. It was about you rising. In the emotional, liberating and frequency-aware tone of Dr. Joe Dispenza, closure. We chase it like it's the final piece of a broken puzzle. We think if we just get that one last conversation, that perfect apology, that explanation for the silence, then we'll be free. But that's the illusion of the old self. The self still trapped in the past, in the story, in the emotional chemical addiction to why. Joe Dispenza would tell you, you don't need closure from the person. You need a new energy within the body. Because closure, as most people understand it, is external, but true liberation is internal. The old version of you needed answers to make sense of your pain. It needed to assign blame, to find order, to stay attached. Because detachment felt like death. But that version of you was still entangled, still fused with the emotion of the past, still trying to get the nervous system to relax by solving a story that no longer exists. In neuroscience, this is called firing and wiring. Every time you revisit what happened, relive the hurt, rehearse your worth through someone else's actions, you're reinforcing an identity tied to suffering. You're keeping yourself chemically and emotionally bound to a moment that is no longer real, except in you. Healing begins when you recognize that closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. When you stop needing anything more from them to feel whole. You don't need to understand why he left. You don't need to know if he regrets it. You don't need to find out what could have been. Because that's the language of a self still seeking permission to move on. The healed self no longer needs to explain the wound. She has outgrown it, not by force, not by revenge, but by choosing a new emotion, again and again, until her nervous system no longer flinches at his name. You see, what most people call closure is actually a form of control, a way to make the unpredictable feel safe. But healing doesn't come from control. Healing comes from surrender, from being okay without answers, from accepting that peace is a frequency, not a fact. When you shift your focus from understanding them to understanding yourself, you no longer need a closing chapter, because you've already written a new book. In the quantum field, the version of you who is still waiting for closure cannot access the timeline where she is already free. You can't enter a new reality carrying the weight of who you used to be. So you must ask yourself, What am I really waiting for? His words. Or my own permission to stop needing them. The moment you stop needing closure is the moment your energy becomes available again. Available to heal, to grow, to create. You begin living in the present. You begin creating from the heart. You begin choosing not from your wound, but from your worth. And here's the miracle: you start to feel lighter. Not because someone else made it right, but because you finally let it be what it was, without needing to make it make sense. That is freedom. So let the old you fade. The version who needed closure has served her purpose. She brought you to this threshold. Now let her go. Let your new self rise. The one who no longer needs to close the chapter. Because she's already started a new story, written in the neuroscience-rooted, trauma-aware and self-liberating voice of Dr. Joe Dispenza. It wasn't just about him. It wasn't even just about love. It was about the emotional chemistry you built with the story. The highs, the lows, the longing, the pain. The internal roller coaster you rode so many times that your body, without you realizing it, became addicted to it. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches us that we don't just remember experiences, we memorize emotions. When we repeat a story often enough, the brain and body begin to operate on autopilot. The thoughts trigger chemicals, the chemicals trigger feelings, and the feelings trigger more thoughts. A loop is formed, one that becomes so familiar it feels like truth. But it's not truth, it's an emotional addiction. You didn't just miss him, you missed the sensation of wanting, the ache of absence, the thrill of uncertainty. That emotional cocktail became your normal, even if it hurt, because pain, when repeated often enough, becomes a comfort zone. So even as you try to move on, your body pulls you back. You say, "I'm over it." But then you find yourself checking his profile, rereading old texts, feeling the same tension in your chest. Why? Because your body has memorized that identity. You are chemically addicted. Not to the man, but to the feeling of needing him. This is the hidden prison. And the bars are built from your own neurochemistry. But here's the key: you can't heal at the level of thought alone. You have to break the emotional cycle in the body. This is why meditation, breathwork, elevated emotions, they're not just spiritual practices. They are tools of neurological freedom. They rewire your emotional baseline. When you teach your body what peace feels like, when you breathe into safety, when you hold gratitude and love without needing it to come from someone else, you are detoxing from the past. You are telling your nervous system, this is the new normal. It's uncomfortable at first. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. Your body has spent so long in survival mode, craving, fearing, clinging, that ease feels threatening. But this is exactly where the healing must occur. You don't need to fight the emotion. You need to witness it, interrupt the pattern, and choose differently. This is self-reprogramming. Not in theory, but in action. Each time you interrupt the loop, each time you feel the trigger and pause, breathe, soften, you weaken the old neural network. You dissolve the emotional memory, and eventually, that loop stops controlling you. You're no longer compelled to reach out. You're no longer drawn to the familiar pain. You're no longer your past self. You've outgrown the addiction. And here's the liberation. Once you break free from the emotional trap, you realize it was never about the person. It was about the part of you that believed you needed their energy to feel alive. Now you generate that energy yourself. That's sovereignty. That's freedom. You've shifted from emotional dependence to energetic autonomy. No more needing someone else to regulate your worth. No more outsourcing your sense of self. No more reliving stories just to feel something. You are the feeling now. You are the source. The prison door was never locked. It was held by habit. And now you've walked through it. In the transformational, frequency, focused, and identity-shifting voice of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Most people focus on what they want. They write lists. They visualize their dream partner. They set intentions. They beg the universe, bring him back, make him realize, let love return. But the quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being. Wanting is rooted in lack. It vibrates with the signal of, I don't have. And the more you emit that signal, the more you reinforce the reality of separation. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches, you must become the energy of the thing you desire. You don't pull it toward you. You align with it. Because you don't attract love. You attract from love. You don't attract peace. You attract through peace. If you want a conscious, present, emotionally available partner, you must first become the version of you who embodies those same qualities. The field mirrors your identity, not the identity you speak aloud, but the one encoded in your emotions, your thoughts, your patterns. This is not punishment. This is coherence. If you live in longing, you attract those who stay just out of reach. If you live in fear, you attract those who validate your fear. If you live in wholeness, you attract experiences that affirm that you are already complete. So many people ask, why do I keep attracting the same type of person? The answer is not random. It's repetition. You are unconsciously signaling to the field through the emotions you rehearse. This is why deep healing is not about external change. It's about internal recalibration. You must become the woman who no longer needs love to come from the outside to feel worthy. You must become the man who no longer needs validation to feel seen. When you do the inner work, when you elevate your thoughts, regulate your emotions, release your addictions to pain, you become energetically unavailable for the people and patterns that once defined your life. And the beauty of this transformation, you stop waiting for love. You radiate it. You no longer obsess over whether he will text back. You no longer analyze someone's silence to determine your value. You are no longer a magnet for the old because you're no longer emitting the old frequency. You are no longer what you were. You are now who you've chosen to become. This is not bypassing. This is not pretending. This is identity work at the level of the quantum field. And as Dr. Dispenza teaches, the moment you begin to feel the emotions of your future self, before that future arrives, you are collapsing time. You are drawing the timeline closer. You are shifting realities. Because the version of you who is loved, whole, grounded, and sovereign, she already exists. She is not a dream. She is a frequency. And when you hold that frequency long enough, consistently enough, deeply enough, life must rearrange itself to meet you there. Not because you chased it, not because you proved yourself, but because you finally remembered Z. You don't attract what you beg for, you attract what you become. So if you want a love that is whole, deep, and aligned, become whole, love deeply, and align every day with the highest version of you. Because the field is always listening, and it doesn't hear your words. It hears your state of being. When you heal, he returns, but you're already whole, spoken in the elevated, grounded, and soul-freeing voice of Dr. Joe Dispenza, bridging energy, identity, and emotional liberation. You thought healing was about getting him back, but healing was never about him. It was always about you, remembering what you forgot, reclaiming what you gave away, realizing you were already whole long before love broke you open. The mind will always seek story. It will ask why he left. It will crave closure. It will replay, rewrite, reach back. But healing does not come through understanding the past. It comes from changing your energy in the present. You see, healing is not about fixing what happened. It's about becoming someone new because of what happened. It's not about making sense of your pain. It's about no longer needing pain to feel alive. You didn't come here to wait for someone to love you right. You came here to remember that love has always been inside you. That safety was never in his presence, but in your alignment. When you heal, yes, he may return. But the most powerful part isn't that he came back. It's that you didn't need him to. Because you stopped being the version of you who begged for belonging, you became the one who belonged to herself. Now your energy is clear, now your field is coherent, now your identity is no longer shaped by loss, but by expansion, and from this place, you no longer ask, will he come back? You ask, what future am I ready to become? Because you are no longer waiting. You are creating. You are no longer acting. You are radiating. You are no longer half. You are whole. And this version of you, she doesn't need love to return to feel enough, because she finally returned to herself, and that was the love story all along.